Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Thrivestry Podcast. Master the art of thriving at life, where we talk about creating change in your life and then the world around us. I'm your host, Jeremy Jones, and this is my co-host, Gigi. Say hi, Gigi.
Hi.
And today we're going to be talking about buyer's remorse and decision fatigue, and how understanding these things can really kind of help you do things in your life and make change and make your life better. So let's just break it down first. The decision fatigue is when we're making, as what we know is, as the more kind of high functioning decisions we have to make, we start to get worn out, And so what's really interesting is some of the research. For example, they would have people go register for their baby, or register for their wedding or whatever at the store. And what they found was that people which you'd think is actually kind of a fun thing, and it should be like motivating to go be like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. But you do have to decide on like which serving spoon do you want at Crate and Barrel or whatever. and so that at the end of that, they were able to quantitatively measure that people were more fatigued from that. And as the longer they went, the more poor decisions they were making. And so if you think about that in our daily lives, if you're having to make a lot of decisions about like what you're going to wear and what you're going to eat for breakfast, and then you go to work and you're making all these high level decisions, then as the day goes on, and especially as the days stack up, you start to get more and more decision fatigue. And then it's easier when you get home to just be like, you know what, I'm just going to eat this thing anyway. Or I'm going to skip the gym anyway, or I'm going to just turn on the TV, because you don't want to make any more decisions. And so that's what happens with decision fatigue. And then buyer's remorse is, everybody should be familiar with this. It's basically once you get excited and you buy something, and then afterward you have remorse, and it's
That was the best you could do.
And I was gonna elaborate, and you have this feeling, I paid too much. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It underperformed or whatever. And so like some of the research says didn't live up to the expectations. There's another one that's better, or there's a better deal, or I didn't really need it, or I'm not using it. And so that's where buyer's remorse comes in. And it can be some of the most common things that cause buyer remorse are like apparel and shoes, but also like houses and cars and electronics and stuff like that. And so what was really interesting about one article I read recently talked about and the fact that buyer's remorse happens almost exclusively with things. So when you're buying things versus experiences. And so this is becoming more and more common, where people are starting to understand that we kind of live in a world of the experience economy. And now it's so easy to buy something, when you're sitting on your toilet on your phone, you can buy it within 1 or 2 clicks, and then you end up having this buyer's remorse. And when it comes, and then you're like, why did I buy this? But there's also a term, FOMO, fear of missing out. And that speaks to the kind of the mindset of, going to that concert, or signing up for skydiving or whatever, like doing an experience that, creates memories, maybe you learn something. Very few people have buyer's remorse from an experience, because that stays with you, your whole life, versus the thing that you thought you wanted, doesn't end up living up to expectations or whatever. So I thought that was really interesting. And for those of you guys who are listening to this later on, we just started the CrossFit Opens. For some of you are probably familiar with the CrossFit Open, where they announce basically a workout that is like a challenge, and you have to do it, and then you're scored. Well, one of the most common things is, as soon as you're done with the workout, within a minute of getting up off the floor, your brain goes, I could have done it better. I could have done this better. I shouldn't have gotten no rep here. I should have went faster there. I know if I do it again, I'll do better. And it's almost universal. It's almost the exception is when you don't have those thoughts. That's really more the exception than the and it's a form of buyer's remorse. It's really interesting that I thought about that, because I was like, that's always, it's you. I pull someone off the ground and tell them how good a job they did, and then they start going, I think I need to do it again. I'm like, wait a minute.
I don't think that it's a form of buyer's remorse. You're going to need to convince me of this. So, okay. So my perception of what buyer's remorse is from like a psychological perspective, point of view, I don't know, is like, so when you're buying something, the marketing, or I know we've got some stuff to talk about with respect to marketing later too, so it'll all tie back in. But the marketing, like the job of Amazon or whatever is exciting you on your phone while you're sitting on the toilet, I guess, is where you do all of your buying, Jay. But I've never done that. So the marketing is designed to get you excited, right? And the excited is like your inner child, right? So if you kind of in transaction analysis, which is just a fancy term for like the different parts of who you are on the inside, right? There's child, and then there's adult, and then there's parent, and everyone has these three things inside them. And what buyer's remorse is when the kid, your inner child, gets so excited about that awesome water trampoline that's $500 that you just have to have for the cottage, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna buy it. And you buy it and it comes and you're like, this is smaller than I thought it was. It's not really that durable. Oh, it can't go in salt water. Well, okay. And that's when like your adult or your parent state kicks in and starts to kind of be like, hey, you shouldn't have bought that. And like, and it comes down on you. And that's what buyer's remorse is, right? Is that like, you know, your excited child state buy something without getting permission from the parent, basically, right? So the parent or the adult state. And that's when you get the remorse. So I don't know how that, like, how does that translate in like a sports sense? Because here's what I feel like happens after you finish a race, and this is coming from like 10 years of being a competitive swimmer and a soccer player and an athlete in real sports. We'll save that conversation for another day too. But the feeling is like, if you lose, you look for ways to improve. And that's the mindset. It's not a buyer's remorse thing so much as a learning moment, right? I could have held my breath on that last flip turn, or I could have pushed harder in my kick at the end. I feel like I finished and I touched the wall, and this is all racing stuff, right? You know, I finished and I still have breath left, which means that I didn't push it as hard as I could have, right? So I don't feel like it's the same as buyer's remorse so much as just learning moments. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think kind of what you're saying about the parent stepping in and analyzing your purchase is kind of what happens after the race. Is your parent, you know, your inner coach or whatever, it starts analyzing, you know, could you have done better? And what I think is also unique about something like the CrossFit Open is there is no like definitive finish line, right? Unless you're the one who wins the entire world or your age division or whatever, like you're always going to be placed amongst thousands of other people. And so what happens there is you always think, oh, I could get one more rep, or I could get, you know, another round or whatever. And so I think that there is kind of this analyzing that's going on. But I think that analyzing happens with purchases too. You know, like, so you get sold on it is different in the fact that there's you get excited and you're sold in the moment, and they sell your child. And then afterward, you end up sitting back and analyzing, you know, like, and that's where, even if the purchase was actually something you needed, and sometimes there's buyer's remorse too, because you just start looking at all the other options, and you start seeing like the grass is greener kind of a thing, right? You start comparing, and you're like, well, that one's a little cheaper and it does this better. Maybe I should have got that one. And then you start thinking like, oh, this one isn't as good as I originally thought. And I think, again, and I want to tie it into the decision fatigue piece that you know, if you're continuing to think and make decisions about the products and the decisions you've already made, you're just spinning your wheels and wasting your energy, right? And so one of the things that we all need to do in our lives is, once we've made a decision, we just need to move on and don't analyze. And so it's really interesting that I know that some of my close friends that are good at this, and I've noticed it, is that you know, I'll be like, oh, but what about this or what about that? And then they'll be like, no, I don't even think about it. Once I bought the car, I don't even look for other cars or analyze or anything, even though they did a ton of shopping beforehand, you know, and they did their homework, and then it was done, you know. And I think that's really a good thing we can do in all parts of our life, you know, and kind of tying into what we talked about before in one of the other podcasts, is removing the decisions for like food, for example. And so if you sit down and you prepare your meals and you have all these containers and they're ready to go, and they're, if you're doing weighing and measuring, they're already all measured out, you know exactly what's in them. And that removes the decision. If you set your outfit out the night before, or you have very similar clothes, you don't have to think about what you're going to wear. You can just grab it. They say like, Steve Jobs always wore the same thing, and I don't know. I think that's kind of a little bit blown out of proportion, but it is nice to not have to think about what, and make those small decisions. And then you can set your life up with all these small decisions where it's like, okay, done. Now I can worry about other things.
Okay. So I will agree that if you're suggesting that but let me see if I get this right. The buyer's remorse comes from choosing the wrong strategy or the wrong approach on one of these, like, and you sticking with the games as an example. You don't know how to prepare, and you can't try different strategies, and you can't take different approaches. Like in most sports, that's where practice comes in, and that's where sports specific stuff really comes in as like, here's how to approach this specific race. Here's how to play this specific game. We're going to watch the game tape and we're going to learn about this specific team and how to tackle these specific things. So there's less decision fatigue on those types of sports because you're able to learn and adapt and decide and take a path and then learn from that and decide on another path and learn from that, right? So this kind of this constant forward momentum. With something like the games, it's announced Thursday, you have until Monday. You physically can't try all of those possible strategies in the course of, what is it, 96 hours, 72 hours, I don't even know, but you probably know, right? You physically can't. So that's when it becomes so important to pick a strategy, commit to it, and just go, right? Is that what you're saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because a lot of other sports where you're playing a match, right? You're doing a race. It's like, you can't be like, oh, let me do that again. Like you can always go like, oh, I should have done this, but I should have done that better. I'll learn for next time.
You learn for next time though.
Yeah. You're not like, okay, everybody, we're all going to come back again here on Sunday and do this again, right? Like that. And then they get to repeat too, and that's different, right? Where in this case, people do these workouts sometimes, 2 or 3 or 4 times. And so, not to go off in too much of a tangent, but if you're repeating the workout, 2 and sometimes 3 times over those 4 days, you're not training. So you're not actually staying fit and getting better. You're really focusing on that, over the period of 5 weeks, your fitness is going to decrease across those 5 weeks, because 5 weeks is roughly 10% of the year, right? And so if you're doing a bunch of weird stuff beforehand to get ready, and then afterward you need like a week off because you're just hammered because you've been repeating the workout 2 or 3 times a week, that's actually more like 15% of the year. And so over time, you're going to get behind, and not to mention you increase your risks of injury and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's just interesting that I made that connection in my mind. I was like, it is kind of like buyer's remorse. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but I do think that a lot of a lot of wasted energy goes into this remorse, where it comes to where we start still thinking about our purchase and still analyzing and comparing and things like that, where that mental energy could be used for other things. So one of the reasons why fasting works so well is, I believe there are a lot of physiological reasons for not eating for certain times. They've proven that, has some benefits and things, and it's not for everybody. I think it just kind of depends on the person. And there's different versions of it. And, most people like to just skip breakfast and just eat breakfast later, basically. And so that's something that I've been doing for years, and it works well for me. And so a lot of times I won't eat my first meal until 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And then I'll eat until, 9 or whatever at night. And then I just don't eat, and I'm not hungry. Like I'm pretty, what they call fat adapted. So I ate a lot of fat. I'm fully allergic to corn and gluten. So I don't eat any of those things. And so I'm just eating a lot of meat and vegetables. So I think that's why I don't get the same hunger that a lot of people would get. The research they're saying now, though, is that it's actually better to fast at night, right? So you actually would stop eating at like 6 p.m. and then not eat until breakfast. And then you should actually have breakfast right after you wake up. And there's a bit more benefit to doing it that way. So
that's like a 14-hour fast, right? Assuming like if you stop eating after dinner at 6 and then you eat breakfast at 8 or at 7.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's not even that like crazy of a time duration, but it more matches your circadian rhythms, and it will help you sleep better, and you'll get more out of the sleep that you get. And, so there's research around that. And I've kind of played around with it a little bit, but I'm so used to my current schedule, and it, like I said, it works for me. So I'm trying to muster the mental juices myself to be able to push myself into a different routine to try it. But but the reason why it's good is, again, the decision fatigue isn't there because you've made this conscious decision that I am just not going to eat. So it's not deciding, do I want this or that or that? Where do I go eat? It's like, nope, I'm just not eating. So you go to work and so there's donuts. You're like, well, I'm fasting, so I'm not going to eat those. And you're not having to use any energy to do that. And the food, we already mentioned food prepping. That's actually, I think that's one of the benefits of the meal delivery services. My friend's company Trifecta, not sponsored podcast, but maybe someday. And they do a ton of business in delivering these meals. And it's like, what's really going on here? Is it really, it's saving people time. It's, healthy, delicious food. And they tailor it to the diet that you're trying to follow. But I think, again, it just takes the decision out of it. The meals come, they're ready to go. They taste good, and they work out to be like $8 or $10 a meal, which is obviously more expensive than preparing it yourself, but at the same time, it's also better than what you would probably make, and it's cheaper than going to most restaurants, especially for that quality of food that you're getting. And so I think that is a good option for people who maybe are short on time, don't like cooking. If you got 7 meals a week, one a day, one of your meals, basically 33%. If you're eating 3 meals a day, not really including snacks. But if you're eating, let's say you are eating snacks, so you have 3 meals a day plus a snack. Well, that one meal a day that you're eating from the food delivery thing is 25% of the food that you're eating, right? So you've just improved your diet by 25%, which is huge. And then you can use that effort to try to make better, meals and meal prep on the other stuff, So,
have you ever heard the concept that like it's easier to do something 100% than it is to do something 80%? Have you ever heard that concept?
No, it sounds like it makes sense, but I know
when you say it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So the whole idea is that, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to eat 80-20, it's easier to say, like, oh, I just won't eat. Right. And that's an extreme. I'm not saying don't eat, but like going back to like the fasting thing.
Yeah.
It's easier to say, oh no, I'm just going to fast, than it is to say, oh, is today going to be my 20%? Am I going to have that donut? Am I not going to have that donut? And then what do I have to have later this week? And then if I've got something on the weekend, does that mean that I can't like have that extra drink on the weekend? And then it becomes this whole like craziness where it's easier to just be like, oh no, I'm just fasting. Right. So, and it's easier to say, I'm going to run every day than it is to say, I'm going to try to run 3 out of 7 days. Because then every single day you've got to go through that process of that decision. Is today the day? Is today not the day? Is it warm out? Is it cold out? What's the sun like? Am I wearing enough sunscreen? Maybe I have something else to do. How am I feeling? Right. And you run through this like constant internal process, decisions, and you're exhausted. Like I'm a single mom with 3 kids. I make every fucking decision in our house, and I run a company, and I make every fucking decision, like, well, not every, but most of the decisions that are day to day. Right. So not only do I run my life, I run 3 little people's lives plus this company. And by Friday, it's like, now, like, what are we going to have for dinner? The kids are like pizza, and I'm like, pizza, yes. Because I'm just like never mind the fact that they have pizza for lunch at school every Friday, and I know that that's a terrible parenting to give them pizza for lunch and dinner. But
we are going to talk about pizza in a minute, everybody, and how and pizza for breakfast. That'll come up as our research topic for today. But so that was a good segue into what we're going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, and so we all experience this, and sometimes, like I said, if you just make the decision, this is what I'm going to do, and then that's why going to the gym in the morning or going for a run first thing in the morning is because, like I said, there's no decisions fatigue before that. It's just what you do. It's who you are. And there's a lot less regret around that, and you're not having to worry about decision fatigue. But it was interesting going back to the remorse thing a little bit. I just wanted to point out that one of the things that they're saying is that companies, that's what they're doing with their marketing, right? They're trying to build a story around their product. So it's Coca-Cola is nostalgia and fun and fun, right? And friends. And, these other companies are all trying to create these, like make it feel like more like an experience. No one, I don't really think anybody's really drinking a Coke and being like, oh yeah, reminds me of when I was a kid. It's like, no, they're just drinking a Coke. They might be buying it. They don't realize it, but they're buying it because that's what they associate with it. But that's not what there's not an experience when they're drinking a Coca-Cola.
It would remind me of like that time in university when I got really drunk drinking rum and Cokes, and now I can't drink either one anymore. Remind me of, this tastes like choices.
Yeah, this tastes like bad decisions. That should be like, you can get like the customized Coke cans and bottles. You can get like, this tastes like shame. But but that's what marketing is like I said there, and they always talk about this like story, and they're trying to create it, and that's what people buy feelings and they buy experiences when they're buying these products, and being aware of that, like that can help you upgrade your thought process from the excited child to the adult is to say like, okay, like what am I really feeling? Why do I really want this? Do I really need that? And then you can put it off, right? You can say, you know what, I'm just gonna put this off, and maybe I'll buy it later this week or next week if I still want it. And doing that will save you a ton of time. And again, you're just delaying the decision, but a lot of times you'll forget and because it wasn't that important, right? And it's like, do I really need this right now? Like, and then you can put off buying stuff you don't need, crap you don't need. And that's true for the food thing too. I in the 4-Hour Body, I think is Tim Ferriss book where he talks about this. He talks about like basically you have a quote cheat day or a binge day. I'm not really big fans of those words because they can create negative feelings and concepts around it. But essentially you try to eat really healthy, 6 days of the week, and then your one day you can eat whatever you want. And if you have these cravings, for like a Snickers bar, you actually write them down somewhere, and maybe you keep it on your phone or something on a notes thing, and then you save up all your cravings that you wanted. And it's so much easier to say, instead of saying, no, I can't have Snickers anymore, to say, I just have to wait until the weekend. And it's funny how that those cravings go away by the weekend. And so I'm not a big Snickers person. I'm more of a when it comes to candy bars, I actually like Reese's peanut butter cups more than candy bars. Those are one of my favorite things. When it comes to candy bars, what would be my favorite candy bar? I don't know.
I would take M&Ms over anything.
M&Ms are good too. I like the peanut butter M&Ms. Those are amazing. But if I had to pick a candy bar, I'm trying to think of them at the store, and I'm trying to pick. I like anything with caramel in it. I like caramel stuff. But now you guys are gonna be listening. You're just gonna be getting hungry as we talk. But you push it. Yeah, put it on your list. And what's funny is you go to that Saturday and then you don't end up craving it anymore, but one of the rules or one of the things that he decided to work for him was he would then get like 6 candy bars and try to like force feed himself. So then he gets sick of it, right? He enjoys the first 1 or 2 and then it's not fun anymore, And so then he's less likely to crave it next time because he kind of ate enough, to kind of get it out of his system. And
is that I don't know physiologically if that would make sense. Like if you're having it more, then your body would crave it more because it's like it's an addiction thing, right? Like it's,
Well, but I think small doses over time are probably more addictive than all at once, right? And like I said, and to the point where you're just not, like I said, the last couple bites, you're like, okay, I'm totally tapped. I don't need any more. And then I don't feel very good. I feel kind of, my stomach or whatever, so then it makes you not crave it as much. But you're probably, when it comes to really addictive things like, drugs and alcohol, it's like, oh, I'm gonna save all my cocaine for Saturday. Don't do that. That's a bad thing. And I don't think you'll be able to make smart decisions about the rest of the week if you get to this habit like that. But just delaying that purchase or delaying that craving, I think is a really good strategy that, again, you just, instead of making a decision, you've already decided that like, no, I'm not making any decisions right now. I'm already not. So then you just put it off until, you can see if it goes away, or if you still have that, you still want that thing, or you still need that thing in your life, or you want that food. One thing I do want to say when it comes down to like a lot of the nutrition and food stuff, I do want to point out that it's still calories in, calories out is still a big part of the equation. So, even if you do eat like crazy on that day where you're eating all your fun stuff, or just in you guys in your normal lives, we all have the weekend where we have some big party or whatever, and we eat all the bad food, quote bad food. And the reality is that it's all averages, right? So if you can look back 2 days before and 2 days after that, if you were eating, at a slight caloric deficit, maybe you cut your total calories and maybe cut out some of your carbs, the day or two before. Don't starve yourself, but if you reduce it, and then you can not worry about it and just enjoy yourself at the event or whatever. And then the next day, you tighten it up a little bit more than you normally would. If you look at the average and all 5 of those days, if you average out the total calories, use an app like MyFitnessPal or whatever, and you can see, okay, like I'm supposed to be eating 2,000 calories, and yeah, I ate 1,700, 3,000, 1,700. It's like, well, that's actually not bad. Like you're actually still on track. You didn't go. You don't need to just be like, oh, I failed. Because I ate everything. And I think a lot of people will try to go to that event, thinking, oh, I'm going to really try to stick to my diet. And then again, it creates that decision mode where you're trying to make these decisions, and it's hard, and it's like, oh man, like, and then eventually, and then you cave, and then you feel guilty, and there's this guilt around the fact that you caved. But again, that remorse and that guilt can be mitigated if you give yourself a pass, go, do a little work beforehand, enjoy it while you're there, and then do a little work after. But again, if you can just have it in your mind, like that, what's done is done. I don't need to sit there and analyze it anymore and waste any more energy and time thinking about this. And I think that, and then that gives you more space to focus on other things.
Yeah. That's like, if you're already making the decision to enjoy yourself. The other thing is like if you're going into a party or something like that, and you're going to be faced with all that decision-making fatigue, buyer's remorse cycle, you're not having any fun, right? Like, and you're going, let's use, Super Bowl just happened, so let's use that. So a lot of people probably went and binged and, tried to eat healthier, maybe made like keto wings or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're there to enjoy a football game and to spend time with your friends. That's why you're there. You're not there to get into like a shame spiral and like regret all of your life decisions. Like that's, no, but that's not fun, right? Like, so a part of it is just saying like, what mindset do I want to be in? Do I want to be in the kind of mindset where I'm like counting all my calories and balancing all my macros and doing that? Or do I want to just eat whatever I feel like that day, but like really have fun catching up with Susie, who I haven't seen in a while or whatever, right? Like,
and then they're also, just so everyone understands is that when other people are eating that stuff, like maybe they just aren't even trying to eat healthy in general, but then they just eat whatever. And then you have to have this conversation with them about how you're trying to eat healthier. And then sometimes they will give you a hard time. I do think this is part of what goes on, why sort of in the micro gyms, like CrossFit style gyms, they tend to congregate more because they don't judge each other when they're trying to eat healthy. Right. And so, and they also don't judge if they're eating, eating for fun, right, and enjoying themselves. Like there's not a whole lot of like, looking down on people who do that. You have both. But whenever you go in like the other parties and other realms, there's always like, it becomes a discussion, and then it's like, and then people will start trying to get you to eat bad things because they don't want to feel bad about themselves. So they'll pressure you in and be like, oh, come on, you can have it. Come on. And it becomes this peer pressure thing. And it's really themselves that they're trying to make feel better, not you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so hard when you get into that type of situation.
Yeah.
You're not having any fun at the end of the day, right? And
ultimately, and ultimately you're not going to, that's a hard life. And what you can do, like I said, is try to eat extra healthy and a little bit lower calorie carb before, and then the day of, try to eat some real healthy food before you go to the party. Have a big big slug of protein so that you're not as hungry. And then if you're not going to eat as many chips and all that stuff. One of the reasons why we eat so much at those events is because of the diversification of food. So the reason why that there's a whole science to the way mouths feel and tastes, and that's why when you have this big spread of all these different dishes, it's easier to overeat because you don't get tired of it, right? So you're jumping around between the chips and then this dip and then these wings and these sausages and and then now we have candy and cookies coming out, and you start jumping around between all these things, and so you end up eating a lot more because of the different palatability, right? So we know that.
You who was telling me about the woman who ate all this ice cream, and when she was full of the ice cream, she switched to French fries and then was able to eat more ice cream. Is that you?
That was it was Man versus Food. It was a guy. Yeah. He was eating the kitchen sink, which is actually in my, the place is a couple miles from my house. And I've tried the kitchen sink. The kitchen sink is 8 softball size balls of ice cream, 2 bananas, and it's basically a pile bigger than your head of ice cream, right? And it is the most uncomfortable thing I've ever attempted in my entire life. And I have been doing CrossFit for 14, 15 years. It was more than any workout I've ever attempted. And if you eat it in an hour, they give you free ice cream for a year. And I think they know that you're not going to eat much more ice cream after that because you're going to be so sick of it. But the record is 17 minutes or 10 minutes or some insane. I don't even know how somebody did that. It's ridiculous. But you're eating this food. So what he did is he ate it, and then he was so sick of the ice cream, he ordered extra crispy, extra salty French fries. And so eating the salt and having the crispy, hot, crunchy helped him eat. You wouldn't think that eating more food would allow him to finish the ice cream, but it allowed him to change his palate so that he could force down more ice cream. And I'll tell you this, that when you throw up that much ice cream, it comes out like soft serve. And it was funny because we all did it in just a slow afternoon, and there was 6 of us so we had 6 of these things, and me and 6 dudes, we all tried it at once. None of us made it. All of us ended up in the bathroom because you're hot and it's so gross. It was so difficult. We all had different strategies of what ice creams we were going to pick. And I had I had the bananas somewhere else. And I mean, just eating 2 whole bananas is kind of a lot, right? By itself.
You can't eat 2 bananas.
it's mountains of whipped cream and dishes full. They actually cover the whole tray with dishes full of the different syrups and stuff. So basically what they do is usually people order this thing as they to share it as a group, so if you got 10 people, everyone can kind of eat off of it. And it's only $50. It's not expensive. And so, but if you tell them you're going to do the challenge, they actually put more. They actually load up more when you're going to attempt it than if you were just ordering it as a family or whatever.
Okay.
And the one on the TV is a lot smaller than the one that they gave me. I have pictures to prove it.
You gotta have proof.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, and actually, Rob Wolf talks about him in his talks and in his book. And so it was really funny because I've seen that episode, but you can find it online. Man versus Food, the kitchen sink, at the San Francisco Creamery is what it's called. But yeah, so let's talk about this. Let's talk more about pizza real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. So there's been, I wouldn't call this a study, but basically a dietitian or nutritionist sat down and finally said, well, let's look at cereal as the breakfast meal, with milk, and versus a slice of pizza. And the reality is that a lot of times they have about the same number of calories. But the pizza at least doesn't have any sugar, or not very much. There's going to be sugar in the sauce for sure, but not nearly as much as what's in your average cereal. And it usually has some vegetables and some protein and some fat in it. And so that's actually a healthier option for breakfast is pizza than cereal. And it's kind of funny because when you looked at it, in black and white, you're like, yeah. But it's funny how we all feel weird about eating cold pizza, for breakfast. What kind of life decisions have I been making? But I would vote you're making great life decisions.
Absolutely, every time.
I love cold pizza in the morning, and of course it has to be gluten free for me. But
you gotta warm it up in the frying pan. That's That's the trick for pizza.
Oh,
Not the microwave.
interesting.
You gotta put it in a frying pan with like a little bit of butter on it.
Oh yeah, I've never tried that. What I do, I'll do a wet paper towel in the microwave, and that makes the whole thing, steams it, and then it makes the cheese still all melty and it doesn't get all like weird. But maybe I'll do both next time.
Fry it in the pan with a lid. You gotta have the lid on. Same with that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it makes you think like, well, how did we end up in this situation where cereal is the go-to for people for breakfast? And it's marketing. It comes down to, these companies, they developed a very good product. They use cheap materials like corn and grains, and it has a long shelf life. And so it's very good for the stores. And then they add a bunch of sugar to make it taste good because it's like no fat or whatever. And then it's fast. So you just pour it in, and then you pour it in there, and it tastes good. And it became they marketed it. This is for breakfast. This is gotta have a healthy breakfast, and this is healthy. Now there are some cereals that are more healthy than others, but in general, cereal is not a good option ever. It's really a dessert, right?
Yeah, it's dessert. My kids will say that if there's like a commercial on for Lucky Charms or Frosted Flakes or
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch is a bad one, and then, absolutely. And so my 5-year-old is like, "How come we never have like Lucky Charms? I really want to try it." And my 9-year-old looks at him and goes, "'Cause that's dessert." I'm like, "That's right." That's dessert.
I'm sorry. Anything with marshmallow cannot be considered a meal.
Okay. And you know what? I have to say that there's this thing. It's not breakfast, but there's this salad concept. I went to my ex-husband's Thanksgiving, and their family is like, "Oh, well, we're going to have 3 different salads." And I'm like, "That sounds great. 3 salads. Amazing." And I'm thinking like, okay, a Caesar salad, like a broccoli salad, and then like maybe like a vegetable, like a roasted vegetable salad. Like these are like legitimate salads. One was a Hawaiian salad, which is marshmallows, Cool Whip.
Oh, yeah.
Coconut, right? And I'm like, this isn't a salad. This is dessert. And the other one was like, "Oh, this is a jellied salad." And I'm like, "I think you mean Jell-O." This isn't salad. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck? But you're right. Anything with marshmallows in it, really anything with added sugar, should not ever be considered anything but dessert, period. Because that's like,
Yeah. And it's funny how even that carries over to like what you see, like Starbucks has gotten a lot better, but a lot of people swing by Starbucks and they'll grab something to eat. And it's, they have all these pastries and even like they'll have like a breakfast bar. Oh, this is the healthy breakfast bar. And it's still just a, bread with sugar and raisins and whatever in it. And it's like, that's not healthy. Like why do people think that is a good, that, every meal should have, protein, carbohydrates, and fat in it? That's a meal. Anything else is really just some sort of snack or dessert. And so, but I think a lot of it does have to do with the way the economy works, and in that these cereals and these breads and things are, again, they have a long shelf life. So stores can stock large amounts of them and they don't lose money because it doesn't go bad. And so then, like I said, they use a lot of very cheap ingredients, and because grain and corn are subsidized, as in the farmers get paid to grow it, whether there's a demand or not. So then they sell it for less than they're selling it for less than it costs to grow it and harvest it. And so then it's extra cheap. And so then they fill these things up, and then they put all that money into the marketing. And then that's what we end up getting. And so, and I think people are usually pressed for time in the morning, right? And it's like they have to eat something. I really, it's pretty amazing. Like I usually make eggs when I love my eggs, and I'll eat 3 or 4 eggs every day. And it takes me like roughly 6 minutes to make 4 eggs in a pan. I kind of do like a half poached. I cover them and I put some water in there so it steams the top, and then I microwave some spinach. So the spinach shrinks down to like nothing. It's a huge pile of spinach when it starts, and then it's like a paper thin when it's done. And then I scoop the eggs out, and I usually cook it in bacon grease or butter, and then put it in there, put some sriracha, put some whatever I feel like that day, right? So it might be sriracha, it might be a little bit of ketchup, it might be soy sauce and wasabi is actually a really good combo. Kind of get like a dim sum feeling. You can do, tomato sauce like marinara or whatever. Tapatio. I can talk about eggs all day. But Yeah. So it's when I was really training hard, I was actually usually eating 7 or 8 eggs at once, every morning, or as my first meal of the day. And so when I was breaking my fast, break fast, that's where that word comes from. And so yeah, it's really fast and easy, and you don't have to stand there too. So it's usually like I'm getting the kid ready, or doing, cleaning up the kitchen a little bit, maybe putting some dishes away while my eggs are cooking. And then I just motor those down, and it's like, that's not much faster than pouring a bowl of cereal and eating it, right? It's only a few minutes. If you are somebody who has to wake up super early, or you're up late and you're always short on time in the morning, have that stuff prepared ahead of time. Eat leftovers for breakfast, right? So if you are cooking and things like that, always make extra so that you have leftovers, and then eat breakfast. Give up the whole concept of that's not for, I don't want to eat that for breakfast. I need a breakfast food. It's like, no, you have to kind of like, that makes, again, it just makes it harder for you. You're just creating a barrier to eating something healthy.
So I will say that, like, for me, there's mornings where if I've been up with the baby all night, then we have cereal on hand. And the cereal that we get is like Shreddies or Rice Krispies or Cheerios, like nothing with added sugar, just basically great. It's not great for you, but it's not terrible either. But sometimes it's like, okay, eggs only take a couple minutes. Sometimes you don't even have those minutes. And like, I totally get that. So on the nights where I've been up all night with the baby and I need sleep before I can drive anywhere, otherwise safety is an issue.
Yeah.
Then my kids will get up and they'll pour themselves, like the older two will pour themselves like a bowl of cereal. And that's totally fine. That's not going to cause any damage. It's not going to have any long-term effects on them. I'm talking like once a month, once every couple weeks, this might happen, right? Totally fine.
Yeah, we do it too. We have the rice checks and things like that. And one of them is, I think, cinnamon or has some chocolate in it or whatever. And my son, who's 10, does that too. And more often we do Greek yogurt, and we have like a pretty healthy like a granola type mix. And it's like it's like oat based, and we have some dark chocolate chips we've thrown in there, and he makes that himself. And so he has this like big old bowl of Greek yogurt, which is high protein for you guys who don't know, and it's just plain. And he mixes that together, and he motors through that. So he's getting his fat, he's getting his protein, he's getting some carbohydrates, or sometimes he does cereal. And like you said, it's like, for us, it's probably like once or twice a month where he might do that. But the other days he'll eat 2 eggs. He's been eating 2 eggs most mornings for most of his life. Even when he was like 5, he could eat 2 whole eggs. So
mine too.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. Go get some pizza and save it for breakfast. No, we're not saying you should eat pizza for breakfast, but if you are going to eat, if you have to decide between pizza and cereal, maybe you should reach for the pizza if you have it around. But the reality is what one of the takeaways I want you guys to do is start thinking about why we do things in our society, or and think about it from, is it really because we've always done it, or is it some, is it the company? The company has its best interest in mind, not yours. And so they're going to market, and they're going to try to sell your inner child and get you to buy these products and these things because that's what they want. They don't necessarily have your best interest in mind. And so, when it comes to purchasing things, again, or even trying to eat something that you're craving, try to use that delayed tactic where you can delay it. So maybe it goes away. Maybe you can think about it at a later date. You're not having to waste time and energy on it. And when it comes to things like foods, like I said, why do we always have to have dessert? Why has breakfast cereal become the staple for it's because the companies have pushed it on us. And then the other thing is once you've done something, it's went to the Super Bowl party, went to the wedding or whatever, or even just once you've decided to do something and you've purchased it, try not to sit there and analyze and second guess and go through this buyer's remorse thing, because it's just taking away energy that you could be using in other parts of your life.
Yay!
Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. And send me some ideas. If you guys have some stuff that you want us to break down, especially interesting research, I'd love to hear from you guys. We'll just keep breaking it down and having fun along the way. That's it. We'll see you guys later. Bye. Later.